Hello and welcome to the Ren Den. I'm Ren, and today I would like to introduce you to the Zelda Jacket. So if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen a little bit of the Zelda Jacket before. I've also mentioned it a couple of times in videos here, but I've never really sort of explained what it is. And I haven't shared any of the process because I started it before I started this channel, so it's kind of just been my sort of long-term slow project in the background. But at this point I feel like I've got my process down, and I would like to show you how I kind of make my embroidery designs and templates and transfer them onto the piece and then kind of make the thing, because I think that might be a useful process to share. So I hope you enjoy. So this is the Zelda Jacket. It started life as a white jacket that I got off Vinted and dyed green. It turned out that though the jacket was cotton, the stitching was not. So the stitching did not take the dye, but actually I'm not mad about that. I think actually the kind of outline of it looks quite nice. And I've spent the last, I could even be 2 years. We moved in the middle and I was doing a master's, so I was busy, possibly 2 years, adding various bits of embroidery to it in order to kind of turn it into a themed jacket. The concept behind it is basically a love letter to the Legend of Zelda games. I haven't played all of them, but we had the Legend of Zelda Wind Waker on GameCube when I was small, and I had definitely Phantom Hourglass on the DS, and obviously Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom on the Switch. And I've spent hundreds of hours on this franchise, and just really I would say I was very much a sort of casual player of the games before Breath of the Wild, and then obviously Breath of the Wild I started playing during the pandemic, and you know, it was an outlet in a lot of ways, and I just fell in love with the series and the characters and the games. And yeah, I wanted to have an embroidered jacket, and I think having a theme helps me kind of make a decision. The reason that, for example, I am probably never going to get a tattoo is because I can't pick things to save my life. I don't pick a favorite thing. It's a core aspect of my personality. I have like 6 favorite things of any category. So the idea that I would have to pick a design that I liked enough for it to be permanently on me is quite intimidating, but embroidering it on a jacket makes way more sense to me. I can always just start a new jacket if I change my mind. And it's been going really well. This is, you know, I've put quite a lot into this project. So the collar is outlined with the pattern from Link's Hylian hood. I didn't look this up beforehand. It's a piece of armor that Link wears in Breath of the Wild. I've changed the colours to match the jacket slightly more nicely. But yeah, that's all the way around the collar. That was the first thing I did. And really kind of learning how, like, I'd never done such an amount of satin stitch before, really. This was kind of learning on the job. So given that, I don't think it turned out too badly. The next thing that I did was I embroidered in the Hylian alphabet. It's dangerous to go alone, take this. Actually, it's dangerous. That's to go alone, take this. Which is a reference to, I think it's again, without having looked this up beforehand, possibly should have prepped more for this. I think it's from the first Legend of Zelda game. And I just really liked the idea that it in this context refers to the jacket rather than referring to the sword as it does in the game. And the fact that it's in Hylian script just makes it a little bit like more subtle. They were really pleasing shapes to embroider, actually. I've managed to get the stitches quite close together. It looks really kind of plush. And yeah, I was really pleased with how that came out. Then we moved on to the sort of complicated illustrative bits. So the first thing I did was on this pocket, I did the Hylian shield, which is a classic. It appears in several different games. And it has the Hylian crest on it and the Triforce, which are two kind of big symbols in the games. It was, again, a learning curve. I learned a lot about sort of trying to use shading in embroidery and how small you can make the details before it just becomes a sort of impression of the idea rather than the precision that I was looking for. And also it's not quite centered, which is gonna be a theme, I think, unfortunately, of this jacket, because I simply haven't managed to do that yet. The next thing I did was the Silent Princess on the opposing pocket, which is a flower that's kind of symbolic of Zelda in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And I really liked the idea of one side of this jacket being, or the sort of front panel, one side being Link and the front side, the other panel being Zelda. So the next thing that I'm going to do in the kind of mirror panel of the Master Sword, which is the thing that I did next. So that I've literally just finished, so it's still looking a little bit fuzzy because I haven't neatened it up. But yeah, quite pleased with that. And then in the mirroring panel, fortunately, while I was kind of mulling, well, like Zelda never really gets a weapon, or very rarely, and I'm kind of leaning towards using symbols from games I've played because I just have, you know, a greater attachment to those things. And I want it to be reflective of the things I love about Zelda rather than just kind of being an objective Zelda jacket, because, you know, I'm making it, I'm going to wear it. So, but fortunately, while I was embroidering all of this, Echoes of Wisdom came out. So I'm going to embroider the tri-rod on this matching front panel. And maybe even get it centered in the frame. But yeah, definitely I love the idea of having like the front being a kind of Link and Zelda mirroring sort of thing, because they're such a team. I need to work out how to incorporate Ganon into this thing, because he's the sort of third figure of the like representation of the Triforce and this kind of like epic struggle for good and evil. He needs to be on here somewhere, but I haven't figured that out yet. So hold please on that. I have many plans. Many more plans than I'm probably ever gonna get through, but that's, you know, how I love to do a long project. So the cuffs, my plan is to do one cuff be mushrooms and one cuff be, I think it's fruit was my plan for the other cuff, and just kind of do like little icons all the way around to represent those things, because you can arrange them in rainbows. So we'll have a couple little rainbows on the Zelda jacket, which is I like. And then the back panel, this middle back panel, what I'm planning is to do a sort of, because it is for embroidery quite a big area, I want the back panel to seem impressive, and it will take me years to finish it if I wanted to just embroider it, and I have other things to think about. So what my plan is for the back panel is to do a sort of fabric collage of like the sea and then a strip of land and then the sky, and then to embroider on that. So I'll probably make that panel as a separate thing, embroider it, and then sew it to the jacket, just to make embroidering easier, so I'm not going through multiple layers, and it'll make the inside of the jacket look neater because it's not lined, so that won't show through, which I think will be very smart. And then on the water, I'm going to do the lion boat from Wind Waker, because that's such an enduring image of Zelda for me. I love that boat. And on in the sky, I would love to do one of the dragons, or possibly somehow incorporate all four of the dragons into the jacket as a whole. I still need to sort of work out that in terms of scale, and like how small can I make them, because they're so long, the scale of them is quite hard. So how small can I make them and them still be recognizable? I need to do some experiments somehow on that. But I have started looking at fabric for this collage, so that is a thing that I want to at least have built the fabric sort of canvas for that bit, so that as and when I can sew stuff on it, and then when it's done I can sew it onto the back of the jacket. I've also prepared a whole bunch of templates for shields. I love all the different shield designs in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and it would be really cool to have, I haven't quite worked it out, maybe down the sleeves, but then I don't know if it looks too much like sort of Boy Scout badges, or somewhere I would love to incorporate a bunch of the shield symbols, not just the Hylian shield, because I think a lot of them are really cool designs. So I feel like I talked quite fast there, so apologies, but I just love this thing, and I because it's such a kind of background long-term quiet project, I don't talk about it a lot, so I just get excited when I get to explain it. The next thing that I want to do is the tri-rod to mirror the Master Sword, because I want then the front two panels are not finished, but there's sort of the symmetry, the basic symmetry of the original idea is done. I did have an idea to maybe embroider like the Deku tree somehow texturally above the Master Sword, and then like maybe a bit of like the castle on top of the tri-rod, but at the moment how to do that is beyond me, so we're gonna park that one. But yes, the next thing to do is the tri-rod, and actually this is a really good point for me to show you how I put together the designs for this jacket, because I use templates that I have made myself from like images from the game, and I would love to kind of show you that process, because I think it might be useful for helping you to be creative and making embroidery designs on clothes, because actually it is quite straightforward, but there's so rarely a break, because I tend to batch print them for reasons that you'll see, so there's so rarely like the perfect break point in the process of this jacket that I can kind of show you the whole process from start to finish. That's now, and I want to get started on this rod because I'm really excited to finish this section, so let's get on with it. So the first thing to do is to create the design, and for that I use a program called Procreate, which is available on iOS, definitely iPad anyway, that's where I have it, but any kind of drawing application where you can trace a picture digitally will be fine. If you don't have one of those, what you can do is print out an image, trace it onto tracing paper, and then photocopy that onto the particular paper material that I'm using to get round that aspect. You will need a printer, but you won't need like drawing software if you don't have access to that. So as you can see, I tend to like process a few different designs at a time, because obviously once you've printed the sheet and then cut something out of it, you can't run it through the printer again. So I like to fill the page as much as possible before I print the next sort of batch of designs. I've also gridded the page so that every square is an inch, which is classic D&D, but it means that I can work out how things are going to scale and make sure that things match. So I know that the Master Sword is 4 squares long, so the tri-rod needs to be 4 squares long in order to kind of mirror it. And so all I'll do is get an image from the internet or from my own screenshots of the game. I try to use either screenshots or the sort of digital, like the actual assets from the game to trace them, because I don't want to be tracing someone else's art of that thing. I want to be kind of riffing off of the original as much as possible. And all I'll do is get it in here, scale it, and then draw around it in black, not just the designs, but also where the color changes on the things. So particularly for the tri-rod, because it's a gradient, I'm trying to put in lines where the color is sort of changing in stages to make it easier to color match to my thread. And then to make that process even more straightforward, I will use the dropper tool to actually kind of flatten the colors of the object and make it like one flat color in each section, so that as much as possible I can follow that method while I'm embroidering. And then once the sheet is finished, I print it. The paper I use to print is this. It is paper back, and then it's got a sort of soft, sort of fibrous front section which is stuck on. This one that I'm using particularly is called Sim Thread Sticky Wash Away Stabilizers. And basically it behaves like a normal sheet of paper in the printer, and then I'll cut the designs out of that piece of paper, and you just peel and stick onto the place where you want the design to be on the piece of clothing or whatever, and it will stay there, basically. I've had things stuck to this jacket for quite some time in the past, and so far I haven't had an issue with it. The only thing is, obviously the paper is not fantastically cheap, so I am trying to use each sheet as much as possible. And then once the design is in place, I will get up the coloured in reference image on my tablet or my phone or whatever, and use that to try and colour match to my thread and work out what every section is going to be. And I will record those in my little reference notebook, in which I keep a record of all of the thread code colours that I use for various projects. This is the first page, which is entirely Zelda Jacket, so that if I need to go back in afterwards and make corrections, or even just colour match something else on it to something precisely, I know exactly what I'm using. It's not a perfect system because a lot of my threads I don't know the brand, so if I run out I won't be able to necessarily replace like for like, but if I have colour codes then it's a start. And then once I've picked the colours, they will go in my project box so that I have the whole set ready to go, and I basically just work from one end to the other. So let's figure out some colours. And there we go. Those are the colours for the tri-rod. So that's all the prep work. The next thing to do, obviously, is to sew it, which I'm hoping won't be too fiddly, because actually a lot of the sections in this are much bigger than what I was doing for the Master Sword. So it should be quite a straightforward satin stitch all the way round. I will probably do a lot of this of an evening this week in front of the TV, so there's not going to be particularly montages for this one. I will just see you at the other end. Hello again. So it is several days later and quite late at night, but the tri-rod is finished. I am really pleased with it. I think you can sort of see me learn how colour blending works as you go up the piece. I'm much happier with the sort of middle to top section than I am with the bottom section, but I think from a distance it will look fine, and I can always go back later and sort of blend a bit more, but the outlines feel really strong, and that's what's really the most important part of it. So the next thing with this backing is to wash it off. I should say the lines from the printer on this backing were quite faint, and I did end up going over them with my heat erasable pen just to make it clearer, which is fine for something this size, but for something bigger and more complicated like the lion boat might be a bit much. So I'm going to need to think about that. I wonder if it's worth trying to run it through the printer twice. That's probably going to be worse, isn't it? Anyway, the backing is fine, certainly while I'm still doing little bits, so that's okay. So now I'm going to wash off the backing and then it'll dry overnight, and in the morning we will see the finished thing. I was really worried while I was doing this. I wasn't enamored with the color blending on the bottom half, but as I went up I started to understand the concept a little bit more, and I think actually the top half is like one of my favorite bits on this jacket so far. The thing that's cool about this jacket and about making something over such a period of time is that I really do feel like I can sort of trace my confidence and my ability in the object. So actually it's really cool. Like, I'm okay with the fact that better work could have been done on the color blending at the bottom of it, but I'm really pleased with where it ended up, and I think it's turned out really well. The backing washed out really easily. I just rinsed it under the tap for maybe a couple of minutes and then let it dry overnight. It's still a little bit stiff in that area, so I would say maybe once I've done a couple more sections I'll probably put it through the washing machine again just to kind of get rid of any residue. But yeah, that's my process for doing various things on the Zelda jacket. I hope that was useful for you if you've been thinking about doing something similar, even if it's not a whole jacket, even if it's putting something on something. I find it a really straightforward process, so hopefully it would be a useful option for you as well. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always, and take care, and otherwise I will see you on the next project.